Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some nuclear revenge. Our first story today comes to us from Rumple990. Scumbag does $2,000 damage to my car, steals my best friend's motorcycle while recovering from dental surgery, gets whole life destroyed for years. Let's jump right in. But first, let's meet the cast. There's me, best friend, and of course the star of the show, Scumbag. First, a little bit of background. There was this homeless, he wasn't truly homeless, Scumbag, who I was sheltering in my house while he looked for a place to stay. I wanted to help him out and help him back on his feet. He had been problematic for a while. He was crapping in the trash can, pissing in soda bottles everywhere, and lying to everyone all the time. He wasn't even good at lying. He was one of those pathological liars who can't tell the truth to save their life. And when he got a BB pew pew, he shot out my neighbor's window. This will become relevant at the end. The list of sketchy stuff Scumbag did could go on for days, but that's not what I'm writing this about, though it certainly does factor into the revenge. Now on to the main event. Well, one of my buddies needed a ride to the train station and I was too tired to drive, so I let him take my car and drive him to the train station. When he came back, my front bumper was on the ground and he duct taped it back on. He claimed that he was T-boned at an intersection and injured his leg. He went to the hospital, faked his injury, and came back with crutches so I'd buy it. When I asked the police in the town he said it happened in, whom he said he had filed a report with, they told me no such event had been reported, and they had no clue what I was talking about. I later found out through my buddy who was in the car with him that he was doing donuts in a parking lot and hit a tree. So shame on me for letting someone drive my car, I know. It was a very stupid decision on my part. The cost of repairing my car came out to be $2,000. And I couldn't get insurance to cover it, so the repairs came out of my pocket. So I gave him the benefit of the opportunity to make things right and said, alright, pay for the cost of the repairs and I'll forgive the transgression. He already had a minimum wage job, so I expected him to pay me every week until it was paid off. After 2 weeks, he stopped. So I took his PS3 and safe as collateral and said I'd give it back when he paid me back. And if he didn't, I'd sell it to cover the costs. A few weeks later, my best friend who was also staying with me had his wisdom teeth removed. He was in a ton of pain. That dental pain is the worst. Scumbag said he needed to go to the store. He let Scumbag take the bike to the grocery store, but after a while, we became suspicious. He called saying the bike wouldn't start. I drove over to the store he said he was at, and he and the motorcycle were nowhere to be found. The store was 10 minutes away. We called him and said bring it back now or else we'll report it stolen. When he came back that evening with the girl, he made up a BS excuse as to why the motorcycle had 130 miles on the odometer. The way he told it made it clear he had no clue how mechanical odometers work. They don't glitch and jump ahead 130 miles like he said it did. My best friend would know he's constantly pulling his bike apart and making repairs and modifications to it. I grilled him about the fact that he was never where he said he was. We deduced that he had rode the bike to his hometown to pick up his girlfriend and back and lied about everything. That was the last straw that broke the camel's back and a very bad mistake. My best friend and I were trembling with rage when he threw him and his girl out the front door to the curb. This is where the nuclear revenge begins. Scumbag was dumb enough to leave all of his passwords saved on the laptop we loaned him while he was with us. We got his email and changed the password. Once you've got someone's email, you've got everything else by default. We got his social media accounts and financial accounts and reset their passwords too. It was hysterical seeing the flurry of password reset emails coming in. He knew we had him in the bag and was frantically trying to salvage his situation. He had opened a bank account at the local bank to deposit his paychecks from his local cashier job while he was in the area. We emptied the whole thing for a total of $2,500. Imagine my shock. I kept the $2,000 for my car and gave the remaining $500 to best friend for his troubles and having my back. We then sold his PS3 on Craigslist and split that 50-50. We eventually opened his safe and it was full of random papers and earbuds of no value. But it did have his debit card, and one of the papers had his PIN on it, which is how we emptied his bank account. In addition to that, while he's on the way out, I go to the store he was working at and tell his boss he won't be showing up this afternoon and to consider him to be quit. I explained why. The manager was cool about it but told me he can't take my word for it. In any event, he was never seen at that establishment again. So sooner or later, that manager was going to have to take my word for it. But we're not done yet. We still have a social life to destroy. We hijack his Facebook and make all of his friends hate him. We make posts about the crappy stuff he did. We make posts exclaiming his love of all manner of debauchery and degeneracy. We start petty fights with his friends list in the DMs. We go into their walls and say snarky, nasty crap. We turned everyone against him. And in the process of destroying his social life, a bunch of girls he abused and who lurked on his page came out of the woodwork praising us for taking him down a peg. It's been years and he still doesn't have social media presence. A few weeks go by and we get a package in the mail from him. Turns out he wasn't homeless and completely out of options like he said. Big surprise, I know. The package was mailed from his parents' house. It's an empty threat to sue me, overflowing with hilariously made-up lies and pages of screenshots of what we did to his social media. Me and best friend are laughing our butts off reading it. He said he left town because the bills were too much. He never did sue us, and we even taunted his bluff with our new Facebook account. The reason why he thought this would fly is the neighbor threatened to sue us over the window he broke, and we paid for the replacement window. So he thought that the mere threat of a lawsuit would be enough to put an end to the revenge. I still have his lawsuit letter because I like to read it for a good chuckle every now and then. I'm thinking of framing it on my wall as a trophy. Last I heard, he's completely destitute and has zero friends now that everyone knows how much of a terrible person he is. Even his parents got sick of his manipulative behavior. His girlfriend didn't take long to wise up and apologize to us. So what's the real lesson of the story? Protect the ever-loving crap out of your email, because that's all anyone needs to gain access to everything else you do and completely ruin you. Also, don't save your passwords on the computers of the people you're screwing over. Okay, so we know that this guy was a giant douchebag, but this story right here, it is a gigantic advertisement for two-factor authentication. It may not have been a thing back then, but it definitely is now. And if you're not using that on your main accounts like your email, you are an idiot. Somebody down in the comments for this one said, aren't all of these illegal? And I guess they might have forgotten what subreddit they were in, because this is NuclearRevenge. If it wasn't illegal, it wouldn't have been posted here. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our next story today comes to us from Throwaway19931424. Lady wouldn't vacate private parking space. Good luck finding your licenseless car in another country police impound lot. Let's jump right in. I have lived in an apartment complex in Lisbon, Portugal. The where is important for the last 4 years. If anyone's from here, you'll know parking is hell. Fortunately, my building has a private garage. However, as is often the case, some parking places are more difficult to park in than others. I have one of the easier ones. Last year, I was offered a job abroad and took it. Thought I'd be nice, parked my car at my parents' where they have plenty of space, and left a notice in the building elevator that went along the lines of, I'm the owner of 3B and will be away for at least 6 months. Feel free to use my parking spot. Ended up being away for longer, almost a year. Came back to see my parking spot occupied, which was okay since I offered for it to be used. Put another notice in the elevator, this time to say I was back and would use the parking spot again. Gave it 2 days and picked up my car from my parents. Went into my garage and my space was still being used. Had to park somewhere on the street and decided to give it another day. The day after, it was occupied again by the same car. Asked a couple of neighbors and figured out it belonged to a lady living 2 stories above me. Went up to talk to her and she immediately got defensive and said that her parking spot is very difficult for her to park in, and since I was away for longer than I had announced, I lost the space, which is a stupid logic as the spots are bought with the apartment. It literally belongs to me. She also told me I couldn't use her parking space instead, as she was using it for storage. Went to the building admin, who said he'd talked to her. He did, and came back shaking his head. Nothing. I sent a registered letter telling her to stop using my space and giving her 48 hours to take her car elsewhere. The next day, I saw the unopened letter in the garbage bin beside the mailboxes. I ended up scouting my garage, waiting for her to leave, and would immediately park my car, hoping she'd take the hint. She didn't, and we ended up doing this dance for a few weeks, up until the day I came back to see my entire driver's side keyed. That was the final straw. I talked to a friend who owns a towing company. We chose a Saturday morning. The last few weeks she hadn't left home on Saturdays. I knew, as I had been watching her car like a hawk. So I thought we'd have big chances of her not noticing anything until everything was done, and towed her car. The plan initially was to leave the car just down the road, but that felt too close and too easy. Then I thought about leaving it in a city about 15 minutes away, but it still didn't feel quite right. My friend jokingly said, "Let's leave it in Madrid." FYI, Madrid is in Spain, about 600 kilometers, 375 miles away. I knew he was joking, but Madrid did feel right. I asked if he had enough time. He had, so off we went. Once we got to Madrid, we went out for lunch, strolled around the city, and waited until it got dark and the streets empty. In the meantime, we had already decided on where to leave the car, a handicapped parking spot close to a police station. And so we did. As a bonus, my friend also took both license plates off the car. Then we drove back home. It has been 2 weeks and I haven't seen her car since. One of these days, I might leave a letter in her mailbox telling her to contact Madrid police, but in the meantime, I'll enjoy being able to use my parking whenever I want to. Ah yes, here we have the elusive Karen, who doesn't understand that the world doesn't revolve around them. I've gotta say for this one though that Karen's gonna know exactly who made the car disappear, and while it's fun to put it in a completely different country so far away, you probably just should have had it towed normally and sitting in an impound lot where she could pay a fine to get it back out. Those fines are pretty steep and might help her change her mind on parking in your spot. Our last story today comes to us from Spitzley. Steal from me, I'll ruin your career. Let's jump right in. This was about 2 years ago in college. I had just moved into a house off campus with 3 of my closest friends. There were 2 other college guys already living there. All of these guys were doing Air Force ROTC with me. Basically, you go into the military after you graduate. I really liked all of my roommates and the house, except for one of the dudes that was already living there. He had a dog that would constantly rip up, piss, crap on the carpet, and he wouldn't clean it up. Furthermore, he would yell at us for leaving dirty dishes in the sink, etc., while he was the one making the vast majority of the mess. I had a job working around 30 hours a week and doing school full-time and doing ROTC. I had a job as a server, so I would make quite a lot of tips, around $300 a week. I would leave the cash in my room boxed up because I trusted everyone in the house. We were all going to join the military, and integrity is a big thing. So I go to deposit my tips in the bank after not going for about a month, and I'm shocked when my cash deposit is only about $200, when I knew it had to be at least $1,200. I knew someone was stealing my tips then. It then made sense because my deposits had seemed a little low for a while. I was furious because I was barely scraping by working my butt off trying to pay for college. So I buy a security camera for my room and hide it. I get all the documents from my work regarding the tips I've made over the past few months. I continue leaving my tips in the box unconcealed as bait. I don't tell any of my roommates this. Sure enough, I leave for a trip and I get a notification on my phone. I watch as this mofo that I trusted steals about $300 in cash from me, taking only $20 bills so I wouldn't notice. Well, the next day back from the trip, I schedule a meeting with our ROTC commander. I bring him all the evidence and video footage and tell him about my awful experiences with him in my house, with my other roommates as witnesses. Long story short, he got kicked out of ROTC and ruined his career. He had to pay me back about $1,000. I let him off easy and had to pay the military back about $9,000. He had been getting paid by them for about a year. In addition, we go to an expensive school and he chose a useless major, so he is stacked high in student debt with no real way out. And finally, he had just quit his job because he thought he could get away with stealing from me and watching TV at home. And he had just crashed his dream car he had been working on for a while because he drives like an idiot. I still see him every so often on campus and smile at him. He must have been doing this for a really long time, taking those tips from you, if he thought that he could quit his job and live off of them. That also means that he would have been stealing quite a large amount. Like OP said that it was $300 when he was caught on camera. If he was taking amounts that high before, OP, how the heck did you not notice that? Anyway, what do you guys think about it? I'd love to see your comments down below. Check out all 3 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.